This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am Steve Gould. I am Old Gingerface. I'm your host. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the people that have binge listened to the whole catalog of these interviews and write me messages about it. I truly appreciate that. And thank you to people that bought specifically, I got an email from the great Kyle Williams over in California, bought a Core Essentials belt because I was talking about on the podcast. And they sent me a free belt. It's fantastic. I've used them for about a year. They don't advertise on podcasts, so I just kind of mentioned it to, I think it's a great belt, and if you carry or just want a good rigid belt that's micro adjustable, it's the way to go. So people are buying them, and I said put a note in there and say, Things Police See sent me. Maybe they will become a sponsor because that would be cool. I would love to get a sponsor of a product that I use in my daily life that I could really, give a good testimony about. I actually reached out to Point Blank vests because I wear their outer carrier on duty, and one of their vice presidents I was in contact with, but I got the vibe that it was one of those things where he was like, what are podcasts type of thing? I was like, this is not going to be an easy sell at all. So we talked for a little bit, but I couldn't get it done. So if you have a small business and you love the show and you want to throw a few ads on here, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, the show is totally and completely supported by the little tiny ads you hear that are inserted by my podcast host, but mostly and most gratefully, the Patreon supporters. Still have people joining. I really, really appreciate that, guys. That is what pays for everything. For example, I had to buy a new computer to keep up with the video software this year. I had to buy a new camera. I have to pay monthly for the podcast hosting, for the editing software, for the website, all that stuff. I'm at the point now in the podcast that it's all paid for, and then there is some left over for me to pay my bills. So it is really, really appreciated. So the link is in the show notes to the Patreon. You can go there to support. I love that. If not, don't worry about it. If you can't afford it right now, I know times are tough and everybody's kind of pinching their pennies, including me. If you can't do it, no big deal. The show's going to remain free. You'll be able to get all the episodes on here. I have played around with the idea of making Patreon-specific content to make it more enticing, like an extra episode or a Cops in the News, like a live episode, and just put it on Patreon. But alas, I have very little hours in the day that I can even get this done. So that's why I haven't done it. But maybe I will. If you guys write to me and you say that's something you would like or that would entice you to listen, let me know. I will definitely consider it, and probably would do it if people were interested. So with all that to say, we have an excellent, great transition there. We have a great guest today from the great state of Montana. The last guest, Mikey May, they actually don't know each other at all, which I thought maybe they would, because sometimes I get into an area of the country and start getting people from that area that know each other that want to come on, which is great. By the way, if you want to be a guest, please consider it. If you have stories, if you're active and you don't want to, have your name known and all that, you can use a pseudonym. We can just say the state. We don't have to say your agency. All that good stuff can be done to get you on. If you're retired, even better, because retired guys just don't care and they let it rip. So go to the website, scroll down to be a guest, or steve@thingspolicee.com. You can just shoot me an email directly and we'll get you scheduled. Anyways, 7 years law enforcement in the great state of Montana. He is a deputy sheriff at a smaller size agency, and he is the great John Gatlin. John.
What's up, Steve?
Hey, man. I was hoping you were going to talk right there. It was a small pause. Gatlin, hell of a last name, like the great Gatlin gun.
Yes, sir.
Let me see this. Okay, it's fixed now. My green screen's all jacked up. I don't know why. John, thank you for coming on. Like you said, you don't know the other guy from Montana, but maybe you'll become friends now.
Yeah.
You guys are friends now. Yeah, there you go. You got a new buddy.
Is that his real name?
Congratulations. Yeah, that is his real name, Mike May. That is the man. So, born and raised in Montana?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in southeastern Montana and moved to the current agency I'm at here about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, and you started somewhere else, though?
Yeah, I was next to the borders of South Dakota and Wyoming.
Okay. Big sky country out there.
Yep.
It's a beautiful
Wide
state.
open.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's why you guys had rifles way before the rest of us.
Yeah. When I first started, we had a 308, 223, and a shotgun.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you roll up to a sovereign citizen rancher type. You got a 2-mile driveway where you can just have the crosshairs on your chest the whole time.
Yeah. It was nerve-wracking when I first started because you were definitely the only one there. The agency I started with, there was only 3 of us.
Wow. How is radio communication out there? Do you guys use repeaters or is it on just line of sight like VHF stuff?
Repeaters. Yeah, we had like 5 different repeaters that we used.
Oh, wow. Do you guys get into dead spots like often or?
Yeah. Yeah, there's still dead spots. I bet there still is today even. I haven't worked there for several years now, but I bet it's still the same.
Yeah, I work in an area that has little mountains, and it's the same thing. If you get into the valley or the mountain, it's bad. And then if you go up the top over a road, all of a sudden all your reception comes back, and you're good to go. But it's gotten a lot better. 2 years ago, we got 800 frequency radios, and those are pretty much good almost everywhere. There's just a few spots that are dead. In Montana, I want to ask you about the deputy sheriff setup. Is it the kind of state where if like smaller towns don't have, they don't want to put the money forward or they just don't really see a reason to have like a chief and, a few patrolmen, they'll just contract with the sheriffs and have you guys do it?
Yeah, that is correct. Both agencies I've worked for, they didn't have a police department. The first agency I worked for, they did for a short time. They called it the town marshal.
I like it.
City limits there. Yeah. I mean, there was just one of them, so it wasn't really a police department. They just called it town marshal.
Imagine that, just one guy. How annoying would that be, dude? That's why there's where I work, there are even smaller towns that still have like a chief of police, and I think by Mass state law you have to have a chief or some authority, or I forget how the law is written, but yeah, like those jobs pop open, and then it's like, but if you're the chief and you have like just part-time officers working for you, or maybe like one full-time person, it's like they never leave you alone. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
because we have the state that offers coverage and we work really well with them. But, the bigger things in towns like suicide or death or really bad crash, they might be looking for a local response and it's like always going to be you. So you get, the pay isn't that great. And you don't get all the perks of being a chief with people under you. Cause it's like, you're also the guy we're going to call for everything.
Yep. It doesn't sound fun at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, if they could pay, if they were paying, like, say it was $150,000, they're like, yeah, we'll give you like what we pay the big city chiefs. It'd be like, oh, okay, well, I could deal with this, but they're not. They're like, we can give you $60,000 and you need to work unlimited amount of time. It's like, yeah, I don't think so. So is the sheriff? Oh, go ahead.
That was part of the reason that I left that smaller department. With 3 guys, you're working a lot. You're working all the time. I got burnt out. I was tired of it.
Yeah. Did they have overtime to pay you?
No, they paid straight time.
Oh, really? Is that even like legal?
Yeah. Yeah, it's illegal for everybody but law enforcement in Montana.
That's not cool at all, man.
Yeah, it's not very cool.
Damn.
But I got into law enforcement because my grandfather was the sheriff of the county that I grew up in.
Okay.
My dad was raised in the sheriff's office. At that time, it was a house and a jail all in one. One part of the house was the sheriff's office where the jail was.
Yeah.
And then the other part was where they lived. And my dad was raised through that all the way through high school.
Oh, dude, I love it. So you're like me. I was raised by a cop too, so it kind of was just like I tried other things. I got the computer degree. I tried to work in the insurance world, and then I just ended up being a cop because it was just,
Yeah.
every night my dad would come home for supper in uniform, and I'd be like, "Can I see your gun?" You know what I mean? I was like, at a very young age, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I like the sheriff setup. I like this. You guys have the star, right? Do you have a star or a shield?
Ours actually, the one I got now looks like a marshal's badge. So it
That's
really
cool.
just depends.
That's cool. I like the old school stars.
Yeah, I do too.
They're trying to in Massachusetts, the sheriffs have always just done the jails. They sometimes they'll do canine support and they do road work details and stuff. And once you go from CO to deputy sheriff, you're sworn in, but they don't patrol. They just never have. They just have always done corrections. But recently, because of the nationwide problem, they're sending guys to the full time, like to the police academy, and it's creating a little bit of tension between police departments and sheriffs from like the smaller agencies that are like, 2 to 5 guys are kind of like, well, if the sheriff starts patrolling, then the town could just contract with them, save some money, turn our station into a substation, and then we're gone. That's the way it's kind of thinking. So there's kind of some pushback to have the sheriffs hit the road here, but it's like that in the rest of the country. The sheriffs do the jails and also patrol, so it's not unusual. But Mass is all about colonial law, and like we still have constables that like serve civil paperwork, and they're within the sheriffs. But there's also town elected constables that can do the same thing. It's very convoluted, and I think in the end, if a community wants to have a local police department, they'll just keep it because they want to know the officers. They'll keep the department. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't see a bunch of these little towns running out to dissemble their police department to go with the sheriffs. But who knows?
Well, I wouldn't worry about losing a job too much because there's plenty of open positions out there.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, I sympathize with the argument I just laid out, but also at the same time, if you want to make me a sergeant at the sheriff's department, my salary is going to go up by about $15,000. So I'm not really going to be at any loss for the situation. So I wouldn't complain too much. But John, can you take us back to your earlier days patrolling, to your first hot call or the first call that really got your adrenaline going?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like some of the old timers you got on here. I was broke in. There wasn't really a field training.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I rode with the sheriff for about a week, and then I rode with the undersheriff for about a week. And that week I was with the undersheriff, we got a call, guy requesting an ambulance out in the middle of nowhere. Well, the undersheriff was pretty wise. He'd been there about 30 years, and he's thinking, this guy just wants a ride into town. He doesn't need it. He's saying he was walking along the county road, broke his leg. So he's like, just send the new guy out and check it out. He probably just wants a ride into town. So, this is a long way out of town on a dirt road. It's probably 45 miles.
Oh my gosh! Damn.
Yeah, it was way out in the middle of nowhere.
They sent you alone while on training still.
I didn't even have a uniform yet.
Yeah, that's great, dude. Just a gun belt and jeans.
I didn't have a cage in my patrol car.
Wow, that's great.
So I had my jeans, my gun, and my badge, and some handcuffs. And I went out there, checked it out, run this guy. Luckily, the week before that, me and the sheriff were out running traffic, and we'd gotten a guy with a warrant. So I had a good idea how that system worked and what all you had to do. Well, I run this guy, and he's got several felony warrants out of California and Washington.
Damn.
So the dispatcher on the other end, she's like, do you need assistance? Do you need assistance? I'm like, I think I got him. I tell him he's got some warrants, and he's like, dang it. I didn't think they'd extradite. But I got him cuffed up, no problems at all. Got him put in my patrol car. Like I said, didn't have really a cage, so he was friendly though.
Yeah.
I put him in the back seat there, and it wasn't really scary, I guess, because I didn't really know any better at the time. But thinking back now, I'm like, boy, that's probably not how I would train my officers now.
Yeah, well, yeah, you were, I mean, at that point, that is kind of scary because it's, I mean, you're way the hell out there. There's no way they're getting to you if like you're fighting for your life. It's just you and him. That's it.
No, I was, but I was young. I was pretty young. I was pretty confident that I could handle myself. And you just talk to guys differently when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
So you're pretty polite and you're respectful. And for the most part, if you're respectful with them, they'll be respectful to you.
Yeah, you break out that silver tongue, start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that is. Absolutely. Yeah, that is pretty crazy, man. Why would this guy call the police? It's so, people with warrants are the dumbest people. Like, they're the ones that go by you 30 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you're like, dude, I never would have even encountered you had you just not been an idiot. So this guy is even worse, where he just calls the police on himself. And is that what he wanted, a ride? Was that what it was?
Yeah, he didn't
have
a broken leg.
So it's a, false police report, no injury. What a jackass. So when you arrest somebody that far, is the setup for that place, the lockup and booking was back in town?
Yep. So there specifically, a lot of our smaller counties don't even have jails. They subcontract with the neighboring jurisdiction or something. But we have our own jail and our own dispatch there.
How so that's, you have him in custody, and that's a 45-minute ride with him to the jail?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's your brain's hurting by the time you get there most of the time.
All that wicked, annoying small talk with the scumbag. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of pretending to like this guy.
Yeah. Well, and then you get to the jail, and you're the one that's booked them in, and you live with them.
Yeah, and you guys can just drop him there though and leave.
No, I'm the one booking him in.
Really? So you book him, and then you put him. Do you have to watch him in the cell?
No, our dispatch watches him.
Like through a camera?
Yeah, everything's live. We got cameras everywhere.
Did you guys have a courthouse hooked up to this building as well?
Yeah, that actually was a pretty good setup. It was built in the 80s. It was after my grandfather had retired. They built an actual courthouse in the sheriff's office, courthouse, like the clerk and recorder's, treasurer's office. All that stuff was attached all in one building.
Yeah,
so it was a pretty nice setup.
That's cool, man. I love those little ones. I used to work with a guy from, he was in a small place in New York, and they had the PD, the lockup in the courtroom right there. So they could walk him right from the PD into the courtroom, and it was elected local judges. So, it was like, could be like Bob the Builder is the, also the judge, which has its own, problems. But, dude, did you hear about that agency? I think it was in Arkansas that was using, it was a small department. It was like a 3-man department, and the city was having financial problems, and they got this new chief that said, hey, I'm gonna generate some revenue, telling the mayor I'm gonna generate some revenue through citations and enforcement. And they were like all for it. So he went out there, he hired 2 more buddies. So now they have like 5. And the whole ethos of this department is hammer down, no breaks. So they start writing and this town has like 1.25 miles of a state road, something like that, going through town. And that is their honeypot, So they are nailing people. The guy, by the end of this whole thing, they're writing no breaks, and they will arrest if they can. And in Arkansas, you can arrest for almost everything. They are just arresting, because when they arrest, they can impound the car, and then they had a deal with the guy that was just outside of town, the tow company. He would take their car and almost immediately auction it because they would rack up, they would try to write so many fines for the stop that it was thousands of dollars. And then the person wouldn't, they were victimizing poorer people. So they know they couldn't get their car out. So, and they would go to the courthouse next to the BD, and the judge would enforce the fines, and they couldn't pay. Then the shop would sell their car and get the cash. So people were like actually coming up with the money a day or two later, a few people, and they go to the place and their car was gone. And they were like, well, where's my car? They're like, well, we auctioned it. We didn't think you were going to be able to pay. So anyways, the guy ends up, this department I think goes to 15 guys, 15 full-time cops. The town has like 600 people. 15 full-time cops, a drug task force with canines, and they are just ripping and stripping every car that goes like 3 miles an hour over the speed limit. Eventually, this is how scary a place like this that's not being watched that closely can become. People make jokes about small-town cops. A small-town cop can ruin your life. And these guys were destroying people and making huge amounts of money, and the mayor loved it until finally the district attorney's office got word of it from the complaints of the people's cars, and like everybody obviously was fired and indicted, and it was a whole thing. But crazy story. I'm thinking about doing it where I work. I don't know. It could be if they don't catch you, you can make a lot of dough. I think the chief was making over 100,000. It was like, it was insane. But I don't know why I got off of that.
I don't know how somebody could work for a department like that. That does not sound fun to me at all.
Dude, it's crazy. I found old Google images of it, and they have their drug task force, and it's like two guys with ski masks in their outer carriers with like a dog that's like not a typical breed canine. It's like some kind of mutt. I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are terrifying. So it's a great story. Google it, everybody, if you want to see it. It's really, it's something you would think would happen in the South in like the 40s. And it like just happened. Oh, dude, the other thing they did, they went out to the highway. They dug up the town boundary signs and made them and separated them further apart so they had more state highway. No joke.
We need to make our jurisdiction a little bigger.
Yeah, we need more highway. Totally insane. All right, John, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with?
Yeah, well, I mean, as most police officers, we all deal with a lot of strange or bizarre things. But
oh yeah,
I have one that really sticks out in my mind. This was, I don't remember what year this was. Maybe 2015 or 16. But I'd had a few years on, and it was a slow day. I don't remember what day of the week it was, but I was at the office just talking to the dispatcher, and guy comes in to report older style vehicle driving around, and the door was open and there was a naked guy in the passenger seat. I was like, okay, that probably bears some investigating. So
right.
I'll go check this out. He's like, well, it was last seen near the Catholic Church. I'm like, all right. I go out, try and find the vehicle, and I find it, and it's parked at the Catholic Church. And I pull in behind it, get out of my patrol car, approach the vehicle from the passenger side, and this guy comes running out of the passenger side, pulling on his penis and his balls, yelling that there's a demon in my balls. He's yelling, there's a demon in my balls, there's a demon in my balls. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh my gosh.
Big. He's a big guy. He's about 6'3" and chiseled, ripped, got a swastika on his left arm.
Oh geez.
Head, and I'm like, oh boy, this could get western. So I'm like,
did they teach you how to do an exorcism on someone's nuts in the academy?
Well, no, they didn't. But I thought I might know somebody that did. So I call and I call for backup. I think the sheriff would have been my backup. So the dispatch calls him, and I call him direct because this guy's pulling on his penis and his balls hard. Like, this isn't pretend. and I feel like he's gonna like pull him off.
Oh
He's
my
pulling his leg.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
And he keeps yelling strange things like I need some garlic or some ginger or whatever it was. I need archangel prayers. He's trying to talk to the preacher, and so
Is a preacher
I
there?
no, there's nobody there. I think it was
Okay.
a Saturday.
Okay.
There's nobody there, and I call the sheriff direct, and I tell him, "Hey, this is what's going on." And he's like, "All right." And after that, his girlfriend's there with him. She's the one driving. He keeps yelling for archangel prayers, so I call an ambulance while I'm waiting. I don't want to go hands on by myself, so I'm just kind of trying to keep my distance and buy time.
Yeah.
And the whole time he's hollering, yelling about the demons in his balls, and at that time he goes up to the steps. There's like a concrete pad and the steps going up to the door of the church, and he's trying to get in there. Nobody's there and the door's locked, but the preacher shows up when we're there, and he's like, "Oh, thank God, the preacher's here, the preacher's here." And I asked the preacher with a straight face, "Hey, do you know any archangel prayers?" Because I'm thinking if we can just maybe get him to settle down, if we
Yeah.
just start doing some prayers.
Anything. Yeah.
And the preacher starts laughing and he says, "No." Well, and that caught the attention of the guy, and he's like, "Is this funny to you, preacher? Is this funny to you?" I'm like, "Oh boy, he's getting amped up now." Well, he's asking for holy water, and I asked him, "Can you just get me some holy water? Let's just try and get him to calm down."
Yeah.
Well, as the preacher's going inside the door, he has to squeak by him, go inside, and it's like a light bulb goes off in this guy's head. He's like, "Oh, I got an idea. Alicia, I got an idea. You hold my balls, I'll keep the demon from going up in my stomach, and the preacher can squirt the holy water up my asshole, and it'll get the evil out."
Oh my goodness. The preacher was smart. He would have never came back. See you later.
And the preacher looks at me and he's like, "No, no." He's like, "No, I ain't doing it." So, anyways, I called the sheriff because I'm like, "Where's my backup?" And
Dude, the preacher couldn't even go over him, just do the sign of the cross and like say some Latin, just pretend like, what is this problem?
I don't know. I just don't think he had a lot of experience with demons.
Yeah.
People's balls, I guess.
Obviously, he was probably terrified. He's probably like, I need to get out. He's praying himself in his head, get me out of here.
Yeah. Well, I called the sheriff, and he's like, "Oh, I thought you were just kidding. Like, I did not think this was real."
Oh my, come on.
I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. This is a true story. And he's like, "All right." So he shows up. First thing he does, gets out of the vehicle. He's got a little more experience than I do, obviously. And the first thing he does is get out of the vehicle. "All right, where's the drugs at?" And his girlfriend's like, "Well, we did take a hit before we left, but all I got is this." And she pulls out her pot and stuff. And the sheriff's like, "That's
not
pot
it.
did not cause this."
Yeah.
Anyways, we get him loaded up in the ambulance and have to take him to a town. We don't have a hospital in our town, so we have to take him 80 miles to the next town. But I
Oh
had to
my,
ride in the
80
ambulance.
miles, John? Jeez.
Yeah. I had to ride in the ambulance with him.
And the sheriff's got to pick you up.
I rode back in the ambulance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I rode there the whole way. He was just... He started to settle down a lot, but he was like pointing at a shadow, and he'd be like, "See that demon there? He's looking at us." I'm like, "Oh boy."
Yikes. Did they four point him to the stretcher or cuff him, or do you restrain him?
I don't remember.
So he couldn't pull on himself?
I might have cuffed him to the... I don't remember what we did, honestly.
Yeah.
I think by the time we got him loaded up, he was settled down enough that we didn't need to. I don't remember for sure. It was long ago enough. I don't remember.
Damn. That's crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a Christian, so I do believe in demons. So I won't totally rule that out. Possibly there was. I don't know if the demon was specifically in his balls, but sounds like something was going on. Now, what did you do with his girlfriend? Was the sheriff just cut her loose?
I think he arrested her for possession. I
Is
think.
is pot still illegal in Montana?
At that time, it was illegal. Now it is. But at that
Yeah.
time, it was illegal.
Damn, man. That's a good one, brother. That is like so outside the box of any kind of training you would get
Yeah.
for like how to deal with. So like they couldn't even, like I say in this for this podcast, you couldn't make these stories up. Like you could not even like conceive that story to train somebody on it. That's insane.
Yeah, no, after that, I was like, God, I have the best job in the world. There's no way any other job you would ever see anything that crazy. And one of the funny parts is where that church is. It's kitty corner from my brother's house, and he was just over there with his binoculars watching what we were doing, and he could hear everything. And he called me later, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
Damn, dude. Yeah, that's a funny thing. On this podcast, we've actually had some wild stories from churches, and it just must be when people are raised religious and then they obviously walk away or whatever, and they have a major crisis. They like many people do, they turn to God, and if it's bad enough, they're like, I have to go to the church with this, and then it's then it's exactly what you got there.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things that happen at churches.
Damn, man. That's a good one, brother. I'm not gonna lie to you, John. That's a good one. That is totally bizarre. I'm glad he didn't actually successfully yank it off in front of you. That could have caused some PTSD for you.
Yeah, that would have been pretty rank.
Yeah. I heard I don't where I heard it recently. It might have been Eric Tansey was telling a story recently. He was a cop in Raleigh, and he has the Failure to Stop podcast. But he had a story about them going into a house for a guy that just got out of prison, and he came in and found his wife with another guy. She didn't know he was getting out, and this guy ended up, when they showed up, he was actually pulling the guy's testicles off. Like he wouldn't let go of them. I was like, my knee, your knees get weak even thinking about something like that. It's like totally.
I would imagine that would be bleeding pretty bad.
Yeah, if I was that guy at that point, it would be suicide by cop. I'd just grab something and come. I'd be like, just put me down, man. It's all I got, and it's gone. Oh, damn. All right, John. Can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call you've dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, this one's another one that's pretty tough because as police officers, we have several of these throughout our careers, but one that sticks out in my mind the most is one that happened fairly recently after I got out of the academy, and I wasn't very on the job very long. But the local gas station there called in a guy that was just acting odd. He had suspicious behavior. He'd go in there and he'd drink. He drank like a full thing of orange juice and then puked it all out on the floor. He was just acting odd.
Yep.
So I went over there, talked to him a little bit, and wasn't doing anything illegal, but he was acting odd. I didn't know. Possibly he was high on drugs or didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And I didn't really get a name or anything. He left there. And like I said, I was pretty new, so I didn't know what I should do or shouldn't do. So I called the sheriff at that time. And I asked him what I should do, and he's like, "Well, just come pick me up, and we'll just see what he's gonna do." And so we kind of follow him, and he goes to the next store, the grocery store, and we're watching him there, and he buys another thing of orange juice, and gets in his truck, and he leaves, and sheriff's like, "Yeah, this is bizarre behavior. We're gonna follow him a little ways," and follow him a little ways out of town. And he goes about 10 miles per hour over, and the sheriff wants to identify him, so he's like, "All right, let's light him up." So I go to light him up, and he takes off on us. So we end up getting in a pursuit about 40 some miles all the way to the next jurisdiction.
Damn.
And the next we have the next jurisdiction on the radio, and they throw out some spike strips. Well, the guy that's on duty at next jurisdiction, this was his second day alone,
Oh, jeez.
solo. So he gets the the spike strips laid out, but it's not in a very good spot. He only gets one tire. Well, the sergeant there, he was out too, and then he called his other two guys out because they were in their jurisdiction. It wasn't the county seat, but they had a sheriff's office detachment in that little town there, and there was 4 of them stationed in that small town. And he had all his guys out, and he threw out spike strips. He was just barely able to get them thrown out. He literally physically threw his spike strip in front of the tire, and he got 2 with his, a front and a back.
Nice.
And so he's got 3. We got 3 tires out on this truck, and we're just about to roll in this small town, and there's a basketball game going on in town. So there's a lot of people in town. And one of the deputies says, we need to get this vehicle stopped before he rolls through town. He's still able to go about 50 with these 3 tires out. So I decide, the sheriff tells me you need to pass him and stop in front of him to get him to stop. And obviously we all know that's kind of a risk because we don't know. Is he armed? Does he have a gun?
Right.
What's his deal? Did he just murder somebody? Or we have no idea. And so we end up passing him, and that was the scary part, was not knowing whether I was going to get shot in the back of the head or not.
Yeah.
And I get stopped in front of him. I try to slowly stop so that it's not full force, So I'm slowly trying to stop in front of him, and he's ramming my patrol car.
Jeez.
I'm able to get it in park in between him ramming my vehicle, and I get out, and I got my pistol out, of course, and pointed at him, and he reverses it, and he turns towards me like he's going to run me over. And that was the closest I ever got into getting a shooting in, was right there.
Yeah.
And and the reason I didn't shoot was because there was another deputy pinning him in behind him, and I didn't have a good backdrop. He was back there somewhere, so I didn't
Yeah,
fire.
that's smart.
And then there was another deputy that ran up and knocked the window out. Well, it was a pretty intense situation, and we're trying to get to him while he's going the other direction towards the passenger side. And he's reaching for something. We're not sure on the driver's side what he's reaching for. Well, I hear my sheriff yell, he's reaching for his seatbelt. He's still buckled in. So, it's such a high intense situation, and he's reaching for something at your hip. We all know what we carry at our hip.
Right.
And so, luckily, the sheriff was able to see he was trying to unbuckle his seatbelt, but then he was trying to go towards the passenger side. And we're reaching through the window, and the sergeant, he says, did anybody try the door? I distinctly remember him saying that, and we're like, no. And it's unlocked. He just opens the door, and we pull him out and get him cuffed up. And, that was probably the most intense call early on that I can think of. Of course, there's been several after that. There's probably some before that, too, but a lot of them I don't remember. But that one sticks out because it was early on in my career, and it's one of the only pursuits where I was the primary on.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. Did what was his deal? Why was he running? Was he just high?
Mentally ill.
Mentally ill. That's a big thing now, isn't it? Mentally. I mean we have clinicians now, like the bigger agencies have them embedded, and we have them like there's like an overtime shift for us. We can take they call it CSO, clinical support options, I think is the company, and they you get overtime pay, and you drive around, whatever towns have contracted in the county with them. It's all through a grant. You just respond to mental health issues throughout an 8-hour period. But the fact that we even have to do that now is crazy. You know, there's a lot of sick people out there.
Yeah. And like that deal, that was a strange deal. He was in jail for a little while in our jail, and then we decided to consolidate the charges and then transported him to that same neighboring jurisdiction. And they decided, well, he's got mental health issues. And a couple weeks later, he's walking around.
Yeah. How did the sheriff feel about your car getting all dinged up?
Oh, he didn't mind. He's the one that told me to do it. So.
All right, very good. And what did you guys have take-home cars?
Yeah.
So what happens at that point? Did you just not have a take-home, or was it still drivable?
Nah, it was still drivable. I still drove it. Heck, it's still got the same dents.
Sounds like a small agency thing. Let me ask you about spike strips. When the agency I used to work with on Cape Cod, we had spike strips from Stinger, I think. And if you spiked a vehicle, they would send you a little scorpion pin you could wear in your uniform. Did they do that for you guys, or is that still a thing?
Yeah, but you got to be the one that actually threw the spikes.
Right.
To get one of those. And
right.
I've never got one of those. I've always been on the opposite end of pursuit. I've never been the one to throw the spike strips out.
Right. Yeah. I always thought that was cool. A guy I worked with had the little pin. He didn't wear it or anything, but he had it. And I thought that was kind of neat that they kind of...
Yeah, everybody I work for has got one. I ain't got one, but they do.
That's BS, man. You got to go spike a car.
Well, yeah. Well, last stolen vehicle we got, they tried to set me up so I was be the one to do it, but turned out he cooperated, so...
Yeah, with my luck, I'd spike their car and then all the people behind them, and they'd be like, yeah, the department knows like 4 different cars, new sets of tires. Like, great.
Oh, I've heard those stories before. I know several troopers that got their tires spiked.
Yeah, they work. They punch those holes in the tire. They're like hollow spikes, and they go down. They immediately flatten. It's like, whoop, see you later. We have... the agency's north of me border Vermont and New Hampshire, and it's like well known. These guys run down 91, and they run from like Hartford, Connecticut, all the way up into Vermont, and they're just running drugs or they're just career criminals, but they know it becomes difficult for mass agencies in the other states because New England's small. The states are small. Like you can get out of state in a pursuit, so they'll spike somebody or something, and they'll just be on their rims, but they're getting into Vermont, so they're like, I'm almost there. And if, Vermont has all little agencies in the state police, so the chances of them getting somebody there before this guy ditches and gets picked up, so they kind of like they're headed for the finish line, so they just keep freaking going. But I bet in Montana, if you're anywhere away from the border, that state is friggin' big. You're golden.
Yeah, well, that guy that we chased, I'm sure his idea was to get to the reservation because we were only a mile from the reservation at that time.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Then they deal with tribal police, right?
Yeah, and in fact, on that pursuit, one of the BIA agents was on scene.
What's BIA mean?
Bureau of Indian Affairs.
So with them, do you guys, I assume you can call and get permission to enforce? Do they give you permission, or do they just say, no, don't do anything till we get there?
No, they would not want us to do anything. The BIA, I don't think would care that much. It would be the tribal council that would care.
Oh, really? So they're pretty much, it's pretty much a no-fly zone. You can't even have a mutual aid agreement with them.
You can get cross-deputized, but it just depends on the reservation.
Yeah, that really interests me. I've had guys on before talk about that. To me, that is fascinating to me, how the tribal, I forget which state it was, but they were saying like some of the cops were like trained police academy guys, and other guys were just like appointed tribal police, and they had like no training. They were almost like a constable type position, but they had all the authority of the tribal police. It was like, wow, they really just kind of make their own rules.
Well, you can have it's different because you can have your local tribal police, but then also BIA. BIA is a federal agency. You could
Oh, okay.
you could station a BIA agent in any reservation in the U.S.
I heard those tribal police jobs are like incredibly dangerous.
Oh yeah, I talked to him. He's not in the BIA anymore, but he was, and in that small jurisdiction, that same reservation, they're making 16 arrests a day.
Oh my god! And to be in BIA, do you have to be Native American, or can you just be some white guy in there?
You can be white, but the way they do it is they look through the Native American applications before they look into the white.
Yeah, I can't. Like, especially someone that looks like me, just plopped in the middle. Hey, I'm here to enforce all the laws
Yeah.
on you. It's like,
Yeah.
this isn't
Well,
going
the
to go
guy
over
I
well.
talked to, he was white, and he didn't have any issues with the people. Like I said, it's more the politics that get in the way than the actual people you're serving.
Yeah, they got to start a casino, man. It's all about the casino, brother. That's where the
Yeah.
money is when you're a tribal member.
Well, in Montana, you can gamble, so casinos don't do a lot of good
Oh,
the reservations here.
it's not like a big magnet for everybody.
They do it. They still have casinos, but it's not as lucrative as if you were in a state where gambling wasn't legal.
Right. Yeah, like Connecticut and Mass. Mass has a few
Yeah.
casinos now. I remember when I was an insurance investigator, I've said this before, but I remember investigating a girl who was at college, like in San Francisco, and she had her car stolen during the pandemic. And there were some question marks about it. But, we always get their financial statements. And she was part of, like, I think the Pachinga tribe, maybe? I think it was Pachinga. Anyways, it was in Southern California. It might just be saying Pachinga because I hear their ads all the time on podcasts.
Right.
But it was a big tribe, and I got her financial statements, and they were paying her, I think, 20 or 25,000 a month salary. She was like, and it gets higher as you get older. So she was only 18, and then the investigation just fell apart because the car that got stolen was worth like $8,000. I'm like, well, there's no financial motivation here because she's rolling in money, and that's just the way that tribe worked. They would just pay each tribal member, and if you wanted a job, you could also work there, but you also just got a stipend for being a tribe member, which was incredible. And they were not cooperative, especially when I was an insurance investigator. I went and talked to their security, and they were like, I remember asking the guy, any way I could get the video footage from the parking lot? And he was like, we don't even give that stuff to federal agents. I'm like, okay, thanks. But you could tell he like really took a lot of like, he really enjoyed telling me that. Like, yeah, we don't even give it to the FBI. Get the hell out of here. Like, okay, thanks for nothing. We don't care about your little insurance claim. All right, brother. Can you tell us a positive or heartwarming situation or call you responded to?
So this was the challenging one.
Always is.
To think of, but one that I can think of, and all of my stories, they're all from my old agency, not my current agency, because I didn't want to talk about my current agency very much. But this one in particular was a car accident, and the call came out that there was a guy laying along the highway. It was the middle of the night, and it was snowing that night. And so I go out to try and find this guy, and I roll up, and I got my spotlight out, and I find a car accident. I found a vehicle that rolled over into the ditch and crossed a barbed wire fence, and nobody around. I'm hollering and shut my vehicle off, and I'm hollering. I can't find anybody. And so I patrol a little further down the highway, and eventually I'm able to find this guy. And he's probably going through some hypothermia, shaking real bad, and I get him loaded in my patrol vehicle. DUI, call highway patrol to investigate the crash and end up getting him loaded up to take him to the hospital. And anyways, he looked me up a few weeks later and just thanked me for saving his life. He'd sobered up, and as far as I know now, he's still sober. So that was just one of those deals where I just happened to be the guy, right place, right time, and it felt good to be thanked for. I mean, there's been a lot of positive that's happened in my career, but a lot of it just doesn't stick out because the negative is more. It just seems to stick with me more than the positive. But I
Yeah.
get thanked all the time. I get parent. I'm really big into kids. I try. Like if a parent comes to me, hey, will you talk to this kid? I'll talk to him. I'll I'll do whatever I can. So there's been a lot of parents that have thanked me for, spending their time. Maybe it's not necessarily a crime or something that police would typically get involved with, but if I can inspire a change in the youth, I'm going to try. And I've had a lot of those types of positive encounters as well. But that one sticks out in my mind because he actually took the time to look me up later on and thank me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we absolutely need that sometimes. A little pat in the back from the public rather than the opposite. So Montana probably is relatively pro cop then.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's pretty liberal too in the western side of the state. Um, like some of those bigger towns like Bozeman and Missoula, the college towns. But
Yeah.
for the most part in eastern Montana, it's pretty red.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I always say that Mass is a weird state like that where it's like a very liberal state, but they do want law and order. Like the liberals here, no one's police department's getting like defunded. You know what I mean? They increase our budgets and they want police, they want law and order. There's little pockets where they have done some really stupid stuff, but for the most part, Massachusetts seems to have its head on right with that stuff. They do little laws and stuff or they try to get stuff to tweak us to make our job harder, but they want their property and lives protected, and they know the police are the way to do it. They're, social workers with cardigans and clipboards is not the way to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, I would say when we get hammered, usually it's because we're not doing enough, not because we're not, they want us to do more.
Go harder. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. That Montana just kind of feels like that. I don't know anything about it, but it just seems like I picture cowboys, Marlboro Man, 6-shooters, you guys drinking in the parking lot at the PD after work, shooting your guns at the moon, stuff like that.
I wish.
Now you work at the agency you work at now, sounds like it's not, it's a little bit more formalized, a little bigger. Can you still wear jeans in like an outer carrier, or is that just something the sheriff does?
No, we have a specific uniform that we have to wear. The last agency I worked at, we wore jeans. Well, the first sheriff.
I love that.
Under the first sheriff I worked for, we wore jeans. The second sheriff, we switched to tactical.
Gotcha. You guys dress pretty comfy where you are now, outer carriers, tactical pants, stuff like that?
Yeah, outer carriers with the tactical pants, the side pockets, so we can carry all our crap.
Right. Yeah, it's so much more comfortable, isn't it? I mean, there's some agencies around me that are kind of fighting that, and they are wearing, tucked in shirts with the belts. And I mean, I won't deny that looks good. Like it looks good to like a nice traditional police uniform. But once you go outer carrier and like I call them like pajama pants, like the whatever, like Blau or XR or whatever. It's just like literally my body doesn't ache the same way it used to. Like, you know what I mean? Like the gun belt around your waist, lower back, my hips. I remember going on canine tracks with the full gun belt on and got this excruciating pain I'd never even felt before. My hip flexors were shot at the end of it. I'm like, what is that? What muscle is that? And so I obviously looked into it. It was my hip flexors were shot, and that hurt for like a week or 2 weeks, But when you have it, I mean, the military has been carrying stuff up here for a reason. They don't want to destroy the troops. They know how to make people bodies last. So But I get it. It does look like we're about to, helicopter into Fallujah or something. Sometimes to some people, they're kind of like, this is a little bit extreme.
Yeah, when I first started, I was wearing an interior and had just a regular shirt, but we wore jeans. We were pretty country looking cops for
Pretty,
sure. And
pretty
in
awesome.
fact, when you ever watched the TV show Longmire?
No, I've heard of it though.
So when I went through the academy, we were doing a domestic violence scenario, and my guy, they were trying to teach us, scene safety and whatnot. And they said this one it wasn't going to be hands on. It was the first scenario.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay. Well, they tried to. I told the guy he was under arrest, but I wasn't between him and the door. So to teach me, you need to be a little smarter. He takes off running and he goes down the steps outside. Well, I jumped from the top of the platform all the way down and tackled him. And ever since then, because I had my jeans and stuff, my nickname was Longmire.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It sounds like you were going pretty hard in training. You were probably all pumped up.
Oh yeah, I was all pumped up. I was nervous.
Yeah.
I was nervous wreck. Everything you do when you're young and in the academy, they're judging you. So,
yeah. Dude, I remember that was we have a thing at the end of academy. Like wait to the very end, and it's like the most critical part called APP, Applied Patrol Procedures, and that's when they, you conduct a vehicle stop under scrutiny, you do a felony stop under scrutiny, you cuff people up, you do field sobriety, like the whole thing, and it is so frigging stressful because they are literally there's a guy with a clipboard being like,
oh yeah,
and then I think they, I think you could, there were so many elements you had to complete, and you could fail like one, and then get remedial. But if you failed 2 or 3, you got one more chance to do it all over again. And just the idea that like you could end up with like, this is your last chance. That was like, it's terrifying, man. You dedicate your whole life to this, like, for me, it was a 21-week police academy. You're at the end to think that, you could blow it on that day. It's horrible.
yeah. Yeah, the academy was stressful, but I had a lot of fun there, and I met a lot of good guys that I still talk to. Like I'm going to a training somewhere else, and I see them there, and I still talk to them. I had a lot of fun at the academy, but you're right, it was stressful. I was like those scenarios and tests and stuff. I bombed my DUI, my field sobriety test scenario.
Yeah.
Completely bombed it.
Ugh.
I knew I did though. And the highway patrolman that was doing the training, it's like, you bombed it, but at least you owned it.
Yeah, try again. That's another really fun part about police academies when, for us, I don't know how you guys do it, every state does different, but we got to bring a friend or a family member in and get them drunk. And like they sign a waiver, and then they get to sit in a room and joke around with, the senior staff instructors. They're feeding them beers, and they make them blow every half an hour to get them where they want them. So I brought a buddy, and it's just fun that your buddies now are in police academy with you.
Right.
The unfun part is you are still like a worm, so it's like you can't like really joke around, and your buddy's half in the bag, bombing field sobriety. But that was cool. And then they made a sign at the end of the day that we would be responsible for them until they were sober. And my buddy was like, yeah, drop me off in my apartment. I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to probably keep drinking. I'm like, oh, geez. Listen, don't get like an OUI tonight, or DUI as you guys say, or get in a fight, because I feel like my staff instructors will not appreciate that. You guys do the same thing? Yeah. You bring people in?
Well, we don't get to do our buddies. That would be even more fun. But they did do a wet lab, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
But I think they just gave them vodka at different amounts, and then we just go rotate through and do SFSTs on each individual, and they were all impaired at different amounts.
Oh, interesting. We had one guy in our class that a friend brought in, big guy, like owned a gym, was into like MMA, stuff like that. And he told us, like, he's like, I do not, nothing works on me. And the staff instructors are like, well, HGM will work because it works on everybody. And he's like, doesn't really work. I've done this before. And they're like, all right. So they got him up to like a 0.1. And sure enough, he aced all the field sobriety, the physical stuff, and his eyes were okay. It was bizarre. And they said this is like because for me, for an OUI, there's a big percentage of my decision to arrest for impairment goes to HGN because it just friggin' works if somebody's eyes have nystagmus at prior 45 onset, they're a 0.1 or they're drunk. It just works. Like if you do the field sobriety and the person's athletic and coordinated, sometimes they can get away. And then you do the HGN and you're like, nope, you're hammered.
Yeah, I agree. HGN is the test when it comes to SFST.
Know what the bummer about that for us is? Not admissible in court unless a doctor testifies to it.
Yeah, that's the way it is here too. I can testify to what I saw, but I can't testify to HGN. We have to have the DRE testify to that.
Yep, we can't do HGN, and you cannot mention the portable breathalyzer. If you mention it, and it's tricky too, because I had a sergeant that got bound up on this. He had like a contentious cross-examination, and then they were asking them, then what'd you do? What was next? And, he did 4 field sobriety, or they call them, I got to stop saying test because I was just told by the district attorney's office to stop putting test in because it's assessments. So he did his assessments, and they said, what assessment was next? Then what did you do? And he said, the PBT. And the judge was like, whoa, what are you doing? Right on the stand, the judge is like, Sergeant, you should know better. We might have to retry this. We might have to throw this case out. And it was like so embarrassing. But he was caught up in the moment because the guy's like, what happened next? Because you almost have to lie. If he's saying what happened next and you skip a whole thing, it's like you're lying to the jury because you're saying it didn't happen. So this guy was a very honest guy, and he said it. And then actually, I think the judge talked to him afterwards and apologized because it was like admonishing a cop on the stand is a little bit low. I think it's low class. Like it's unless it's a huge,
especially in that instance, right?
Right.
Like, he's just saying what happened.
Right.
That's the truth.
Right.
He's just an oversight,
Yeah, it's tough, man. When they tell you like, hey, there's in pretrial, they've decided that you can't say this word or you can't say this, you can't phrase it like that. That just makes it even more stressful when you're on the stand.
Oh yeah.
Because I can't say that. So whatever. I don't go to.
It's crazy to me how small of a picture we get to tell the jury.
Yeah.
And how big of a picture we see compared to that.
Yeah, I usually like for mine, I added more assessments because I had one when I was very young copper in OUI, and I just did the ones they show you in academy. And they don't limit what you can do, but they can cut you down and be like, well, did you learn that in academy? And be like, no, but it's, counting backwards, you should be able to do it, stuff like that. But so they put you in, they give us four standard field assessments, and it's a 9-step walk and turn, 1-leg stand, HGN, and the PBT. Those are the certified ones they teach. They immediately throw out HGN and they throw out PBT. So now you have the 2 you can even talk about. And if they did like mildly okay and they didn't blow the breathalyzer, you look like a friggin' Nazi to the jury if the defense attorney's any good. So I always throw more in now. They can tell the jury that these are not standardized or these are not what they're taught. All they want. The jury knows you should be able to count backwards. You should be able to say the alphabet. You know what I mean? So I just I started doing that after I got made to look like a fool.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we could go on and on about the injustices we suffer in court.
Oh yeah,
brother.
DUIs are the worst too.
Yeah, they are. They're way too complex, and there's way too much paperwork involved
And it's so
for such a
simple.
simple crime. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it's so simple. You're drunk. You shouldn't be driving.
right. Me and my dad were just talking about this last night. My dad was a cover for 32 years, and I was saying like, Dad, back in the day, like he started I think like the late 70s, and he was like, yeah, it was like the report was like swerving, drunk, arrested. And then that was pretty much it. And back then they had the dial a drunk, so the breathalyzer, like you could actually it could be manipulated, like it wasn't like certified the right way, so that was like thrown out. But yeah, dude, I think they've made the penalty so high for OUI. Now when you go to testify, it's like a federal offense. They're like these people bringing the top attorneys just to beat it.
Oh yeah, I mean I've testified in a homicide trial, and DUIs are far worse.
They're way harder on you. How dare you? All right, brother. Well, one more question. I've had you here for almost an hour. I appreciate that. But can you give advice to new police officers, people thinking about coming on the job, or people in backgrounds, or just getting into the profession?
Yeah, it's a tough job, especially right now. I would say that we really need police officers everywhere throughout the U.S. I'm sure Montana's no different. Um, everywhere you look, there's an open position.
Yeah.
So right now is the time to get into law enforcement if you want to get into it. When I started, it was hard to get in.
Yeah.
There's applicants all over the place, but now we need police officers more than ever. We need people who are moral, want to do the right thing. I feel like for me, I was meant for this job. Like I've wanted to be a cop my whole life. I grew up listening to stories my dad would tell me, and the things my grandfather did, who was legendary in his part of the country as being a peace officer. I think it's a very honorable profession.
Absolutely.
And we just really need police officers. But I would say that if you want to get into law enforcement, start planning it out young. Like when you're in high school, maybe go to the military, do something to set that stage for being in law enforcement. Even if you want to change your mind later on, it's still good experience to have. But I wish I'd gone into the military and gone that route. I didn't. I would say that would be a good, for one, it would buy you some time for something to do before you turn 20.
Mature up a little bit.
Yeah, mature up, see the world, meet different people, learn different cultures. But I would say also that there's a lot of agencies looking for help, so you can kind of shop around and find the one that fits you best. You don't have to go just anywhere. Find an area. I would not go to a department where they don't appreciate law enforcement. There's too many jobs out there to do that. Find something where you're going to be appreciated, where they're going to respect you. They recognize the need to have you, and they're not going to just play politics.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have right now, like you said, the world is your oyster. If you're a good candidate, you can pick where you go. Police work can be challenging enough. Why have your community against you in the town government? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I don't know, these urban areas that are having such a time, I don't know how they still have cops at all. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah, I really think it's I think it's a mixture of guys that have just been there for they have so much vacation, they have so much, their benefits have built up that they're just riding it out because they said retirements are way up. And they're getting on the front end, they're just getting people that don't know any better, and they're leaving after 6 months. They're doing the job, and they're like, "This is as bad as I thought it would be," and I'm out of here. I'm hoping enough cops go to the pro police agencies and people that take care of the cops that the cities fall far enough that they go, "Okay, the pendulum's got to swing because we need coppers," and it kind of, it kind of rights the ship a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, like I said, it's a tough job. It can be scary, and I don't care whether you're from a small agency or a large agency. A lot of people think that it might be Mayberry in this one-man department somewhere, but it's not. I can guarantee you that that officer has dealt with some shit. Like
Absolutely.
I mean, the last agency I worked for, like I said, there was only 3 of us there, and I I had some things happen where it was pretty darn scary. Um, One particular time that I can remember. The other thing is, I'd say, is recognize that you're serving the people, and you're there for the people. Even if you have to arrest that person that day, the next day you might have to see them at a ball game or something. Um, and an example for that is when you go to a bar in a small place, you want the people there to you want the majority to like you, not
Have your
dislike
back.
you.
Yeah.
And as an example of that last agency I worked for, I went there because there was a guy that was drunk and belligerent and was refusing to leave the bar, and I went down there, and after talking to him for a while and him coming in, and the bartender said, "Yeah, I want him to leave," and I told him to leave, and he wasn't listening, so I told him very unpleasantly that he needed to leave. And then I went to arrest him, and I ended up getting in a knockdown drag out with him. And I was the only officer on. I was the only one there, and it was just me and him. And I was able to get control of him. But as we all know, as police officers, gaining control is one thing, trying to handcuff them is another.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of friends in that bar and a lot of people that had my back, and they assisted me with that arrest. And I was able to gain control of him and get him handcuffed because the people had my back and they believed in what we were doing and what we stood for. So I would say that remember that you're there for the people, you're there for your community. It's not just fun and games. This stuff matters, and when you arrest somebody, you're taking their rights away, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. You mean those guys at the bar didn't just take out their cell phones and start mocking you? They helped you? Wow. Dude, nothing is more heartbreaking to me, and I can't even watch them all the way through, and I actually don't watch a lot of them when they come up in my feed. The videos of these city cops struggling with a suspect and people standing around mocking them or even just indifferently recording them. It's like a lot of these suspects are not armed. They're just crazy. And you could easily, especially, and I'm talking to men. I understand women not wanting to get involved. I'm talking to men able-bodied young men who stand there and do nothing.
Yeah.
It makes me want to puke. It's like, and sometimes it's a female officer getting her ass handed to her by a dude. It's like you can really stand there and watch a woman struggle like this and not help her. What kind of low-life piece of garbage are you? What kind of people are we raising here? Totally insane, dude. I avoid the cities like the plague now. I used to live in LA, and now when I go to cities, my skin crawls. I don't like them. I don't like it's like such a typical cop thing, but I'm not a huge fan of like humanity piled together. I think it brings out the worst in people. I don't like groups of people that I can't identify threats in. You don't know who's bad, who's not. What's this guy want? Why is he trying to talk to me while I'm pumping gas? All these people, I want nothing to do with them. I couldn't be happier living in a remote area. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's tough. These urban areas, it's just, there was not one video of that instant. The only video of that instant was my body cam.
Right. Well, God bless those guys, man. That's the way to do it. John, absolute pleasure, honor to have you on, man. Thank you for coming on. I'm gonna close the show out. Do you have? I'm suspecting you don't, but do you have anything people, in case people want to reach out to you, ask you a question, or any social media, anything like that?
No, I don't.
Understood. I figured. All right, brother. Let me. Do you have like just 2 minutes? I'll do the outro and be back with you.
Yep, you bet.
All right, brother. Thank you. The great John Gatlin. More fantastic stories from Montana, guys. Honored to have him on. Really, really fun one. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to the Patreon sergeants. Those are the folks that keep the lights on by donating. Just picked up another one yesterday. I'm very grateful for that. And who I'm talking about is Jessica King, everybody. The great Jason Labrie, Bentley Barnett, Zachary Pleat, Sheriff Ron, Ossifer Andy, Adam McMahon, the great Clark LaCuff, Nancy Hammond, everybody, Zach Haney, ladies and gentlemen, the great Brad Thompson, Kyle Roberts, Jace Crow, Christian, the great Elliot Sykes, the admirable Dave Ellman, Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother, be safe out there. There's Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys, see you at church. Dan Carlson, everybody, check him out, Burley Boards. Scott Young, the great Thomas Connell, Dennis Carrasquillo, my man. George Tessier, everybody, also known as Zip. I'll see you at church, brother. Iceman from Motor Crop Chronicles. Check him out. Greg Gaboy, the great Ben Peters, Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh, holding it down at State Police Dispatch. Sean Clifford, everybody. Sasha McNabb, Jason Lau, Lauren Stimson, Jake Pinedo, the great John Shoemaker, James Rose, everybody. Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, thank you very much. The great and powerful Andy Biggs, everyone. The great Chris June, Adam Mehall, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Steiner, and the handsome Lane Campbell. Whew, guys, I'm out of breath and appreciative. So thank you guys so much for supporting the show, keeping the lights on. Like I say, if you really love the show, you've listened to the whole catalog, you want to show me some love, the Patreon link in the show notes is the place to do it. And I will see you guys next week.